sun's hotter than ever before. So let's ride, surfing right some more. Yeah, the waves is on fire, the day is getting hot. This is my desire that I want to hit the spot. Yeah. Cool down. The waves is on fire, the day is getting hot. This is my desire that I want to hit the spot. Yeah. Cool down.
This one Kolohe Kai and Rugga Bubba in the area. All you divers, well, go and get chuggy. And all you riders, well, surfing no more fear. 'Cause it's a hot day, everybody. Shoulda go, and cool off, yay. All you paddlers, well, go and get your crew. And everybody else, you know what to do. Hey, go grab your ohana, it's so nice outside. We living in Hawaii with aloha and pride, yeah.
The waves is on fire, the day is getting hot. This is my desire that I want to hit the spot. Yeah. Cool down. The waves is on fire, the day is getting hot. This is my desire that I want to hit the spot. Yeah. Cool down. The waves is on fire, the day is getting hot. This is my desire that I want to hit the spot. Yeah. Cool down.
Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome to our part 7 of the Inner Wellness 8-part series. What is your boundaries? I'm Sealy Kalepa with King County Public Health. I use he, him pronouns, and I work with the Office of Equity and Community Partnerships. So thanks to those who are live on our Facebook and those who were able to attend in person. I feel like today was a hot day in Seattle, so that was an appropriate song. But I stay inside. I have AC, and it was 66 degrees in my house. Um, just overviews and requests, like always. Just mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Be mindful of the background noise and distractions as much as possible. We will be monitoring the Zoom and Facebook chat for questions. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it over to our amazing therapist.
Good evening, everyone. So good to be here this evening. And yes, it is a beautiful day here in Seattle, Washington. And just like Celie, I am so thankful for central AC in my home. So I'm truly thankful for that. Or else I would be very, very miserable. But anyhow, we are excited to be here, excited to push another one of our classes tonight. This is like really one of my favorite ones, talking about boundaries, and that Scarlett is gonna go ahead and talk about later on. But it's such an amazing class, especially when we start having conversations about boundaries and how that kind of applies to us culturally, or what that even looks like. So we're excited about what kinds of conversations we're going to be having tonight around this topic. But before we go on to that, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Sala Tawana'u Afalava. I am a licensed mental health therapist here in the state of Washington, and I work primarily out of my own private practice, and I see clients via telehealth. And I'm also attending school and doing that full time as well, in addition to seeing clients. So, anyways, I'm excited about tonight's class, and I am looking forward to, again, just hearing what some of our thoughts are around this topic. And might be some difficult conversations, but like Scarlett always says, we're going to keep having these conversations. We're going to keep talking about some of these topics because we think it's important just to be able to have the conversation start somewhere, right? Even though if it's might be difficult, maybe it won't be difficult for some, but it's just one of those things that's really good to just be able to hear people's thoughts about it. So without any further ado, I am going to pass it along to my amazing colleague Scarlett, who is going to be our main facilitator tonight for our What is Your Boundaries? And rightfully so, because she's an amazing boundaries coach as well. So lots of wealth of knowledge coming from Scarlett tonight around this topic. So go ahead to my amazing colleague Scarlett, introduce yourself, and get us going this evening.
Oh, Stella, I really appreciate you. I'm just like, okay, no pressure. So I always get excited about any topic that we have with our community, because one of the things we always talk, Sal and I always talk about, is just like to reemphasize what she's saying, is like we are talking about things that either haven't been talked about in our communities or haven't been introduced, or all of the above. And we are here to destigmatize and normalize these types of conversations. And so when it came to talking about boundaries, that was something that as I present and what we talk about is really how to balance the Western concepts of what boundaries are with our cultural perspectives, and what actually that looks like for us, for people who look like us. So that being said, my name is Scarlett Ekaroma. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and boundaries coach. I've been in this field for over a decade. I work mainly in my private practice, seeing clients virtually through Elevate Healing LLC. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen so we can get going with the presentation. But before I do that, real quickly, if you have any questions, any comments, anything that you want to share, please don't hesitate to stop me in the middle of the presentation, or Sala as well, and share your thoughts, share your questions in the chat, in the Facebook chat or the Zoom chat, and we will answer them we will answer them in the middle of our presentation, because big thing that Sala and I always talk about, we want this to be a community conversation. And that's what we are truly, truly big on. And so it can be inviting. So, all right, that being said, let me share my screen. Sala, am I good?
Yep, you're good.
Cool. All right. What's your boundary? Boundaries is one of my favorite topics, because like I said a little bit before, I was able to help with all of my clients, and including myself, the journey of what boundaries looks like us as BIPOC people, Pacific Islanders, Asian Americans, and because it definitely looks and feels different for us rather than what is kind of presented. And then when it comes to boundaries, this concept to me actually wasn't presented to me probably till I was like in my late 20s, early 30s. I had never truly heard about personal boundaries, healthy boundaries, until I started, and that's when I started my graduate school studies to become a therapist. So it was very interesting, but what I recognized, like how it was presented to me actually didn't work for me. And so I was on the journey of finding like that balance. So this presentation that I'm giving is actually a shortened version of the masterclass I teach in regards to boundary. And so a lot of times, well, all the time when I work with clients individually about boundaries, everything is catered to the individual, because even though we are very collectivistic and family systems oriented in our culture, when it comes to boundaries, we also have to talk actually what works for the individual so that they can be better to the system, better to the family. So anything you wanted to add before I go forward?
Just a little bit. I wanted to share how, when you were talking about how you first encountered boundaries. And I think for me, sharing that encounter too, like I don't think I ever really fully understood boundaries until it was affecting my life in a negative way, or maybe my lack of boundaries. And my lack of having boundaries in my life was causing like a lot of difficulties for me, a lot of challenges for me in my life. So that's when I kind of encountered it, because like I see the word, I know the word, but I don't think I was really able to like understand it and exactly know what it is until not having any boundaries at all caused a lot of difficulties for me in my life. So which is why I'm very excited about this class.
Yay. Thanks for sharing, Sala. Greatly appreciate it. So here's our agenda of tonight. I'm going to share my boundaries story. We're going to talk about healthy boundaries, what they are, and why are they important. Then we're going to talk about boundaries, culture, and guilt. And true, that actually is my favorite slide because we definitely get into some in-depth conversations about that. Because really, we're talking in that slide. I really want to really expand and talk about how to truly balance boundaries and culture. Because one of the things when people think about boundaries, they think of to get rid of a lot of the times. And in this case, this is part of that self-discovery I was talking about. It's just like, how do I keep this because this is a part of who I am and also be healthy for myself? So that's really the importance of that slide. Then we're going to talk about why it's hard to set a healthy boundary. A lot of it, when we'll talk about like how our upbringing plays a role in that. And then really some 3 easy tips to help you start setting a healthy boundary. That I enjoy those tips because again, one of the things that we have come across that with Sala and I, hopefully that you all have come across when we give these presentations, every tip that we give is literally something you can use with immediacy and at the end of our presentation. So I'm really excited about to share those tips. And then we're just going to get into some Q&A and get into some conversation, even though we'll have conversation during the midst of this. So, oops, sorry. Okay, so let's hear the boundary story.
All right, so let me start off by saying I'm going to tell you my boundary story. So let me give you a little bit of background of how I got to this place. So I am a child of divorced parents. Growing up, I would say I was the strong one, the go-to, the fixer, the superhero of the family, both of the maternal and paternal sides of my family. I was the big sister to look up to, and I was the first girl and middle child. Got good grades, became a problem solver. I was a great athlete, a great friend, the go-to listening ear. Again, I was unfortunately deemed the strong one. I didn't realize I was deemed the strong one until I became an adult. I was parentified, which in short means I was the pseudo parent. I have a lot of younger siblings, 8 total. At one point in 2010, I started to realize I could no longer fulfill those roles anymore because the parentified and the strong one life is completely overrated. With that being said, I was also very angry, verbally and physically violent from childhood until young adulthood. And so what would happen was I would give my family member advice. They wouldn't listen to me. I'd become extremely upset, sometimes even to the point of rage. Then when it didn't work out for them, they would come to me to be the cleanup person. And it was just quite a bit. It was something that happened all the time. So again, in 2010, I was in grad school to become a therapist, a licensed marriage and family therapist. When I came upon this epiphany, I was literally driving to class in the evening. And I wanted to feel differently in my life. And I wanted to discover, like, can I live life in a different way? And I knew right then and there, I had to set healthy boundaries for myself and others who I had in my life. So again, driving to grad school, I was extremely upset at both sides of my family for something that they did to me. I remember having this really massive headache. I was nauseous. I couldn't stop crying. I was overthinking. And on that drive to my class, I had this aha moment, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's my family. It's them. It's my family. They're the reason why I'm having these symptoms. Like WTF? Like what the heck?" So that was like a really big epiphany for me. Then I started thinking about my interactions with my family and realized every time when I dealt with them, I was having those same symptoms, and which included also intense stress. I was the big stressful and emotional eater, and I couldn't sleep at all, or I slept very little. In short, in the therapy world, those symptoms I refer to are called psychosomatic symptoms. When I realized I needed someone, I felt like no one was there with me because, again, I was deemed the strong one who had it all together. Because I did a lot of things great and did them well. And from that moment, driving my car to my class, I began to realize my journey of setting healthy boundaries. It was very hard in the beginning. I'm not going to lie, it was very, very hard because I wasn't the first person in my family who emphasized setting healthy boundaries. There were a lot of tears, a lot of moments I felt isolated. Again, lots of moments of anger and rage. But on the opposite side of it, there were a lot of celebrating my little wins when they came, having healthier dialogues with my family. I found a new tribe of people who actually weren't conditional relationship. I learned to say no and being okay if someone was mad at me, because it didn't mean I was a bad person. And it didn't mean that if I said no, that I loved them less and that I didn't see them as less important to me. When I saw the success of setting my boundaries, I began to feel this shift of removing also my codependency, and I started feeling very, very empowered. I was learning boundaries at that time, was teaching people how to treat me and absolutely identifying my needs. So that's my boundary story.
Ooh, every time I hear my story, I'm like, wow, it's a lot. And so I always, and I love sharing my boundary story. It's because it's important to show that this journey is okay, is challenging, but there are ways to get to manage to get through this. And so, as you can see, like my setting boundaries started for me in 2010. So we're talking about only 13 years into this. And so, and it was a really, truly a lot of work, and it was just a continual journey. And when I started setting those boundaries, it always started off very small. And so I even think about one of the early boundaries that I set for myself, and I just said, what activity do I want to do today? Because my schedule was always filled for doing something for someone else. And so I had to really, really, really set the boundary, like I have to take care of myself. Because as I was sharing, there were a lot of physical symptoms that I was feeling that I knew I had, if I didn't take care of myself and set some healthy boundaries, it probably would have been worse. Before I go on, Sala, anything you wanted to share before I go on?
No, again, every time you always do share your boundary story, I again, I'm always amazed and always truly thankful for you sharing your boundary stories. And for everyone that's tuning in, if you've never been to any of our classes, and this is your first time kind of coming in and you're like, oh my gosh, they're like, I thought they were mental health professionals. And yeah, we also go through things. And if you realize in all of our classes too, to include this one, we are very transparent with our experiences. We are very transparent in sharing our stories with our communities and with everyone that's tuning in, just because we know the power of sharing our own stories and the importance of that in connecting with our communities. So I just wanted to add that. And again, thank you for sharing your boundary story, Scarlett.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And so transparency for us, for Sal and I, again, is very, very important, because a lot of times we think when we see somebody in our position, doctors, anybody in the medical field, we often think, oh, they got it all together because they're in this field. And it's a lot of times, though, it's not true. Like, we all have our own challenges. We all handle it in different ways. And so that's the point of sharing these stories, is so that you know that you're not alone. So Celie, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. But how do you deal with the guilt?
Talk about that.
Oh, okay. I jumped ahead too far.
It's fine. We'll talk about that. And so because I think that's one of the biggest things, that why I wanted to focus in on one of our slides, because we talk about boundaries, guilt, and culture. And so, because part of what we talk about guilt is we have to talk about the root of that and where that comes from. So we'll definitely get into that, Celie. I got you.
Okay. Right on.
All right. So healthy boundaries. So let's talk about what are they. So before we begin, my engagement question to you all is, when you think about the word boundary, think about the word healthy boundary, personal boundary, what ideas, thoughts, and feelings come up for you? You can put them in the chat or unmute yourselves. And if anything's in the Facebook chat, let me know that as well.
Can you say that again?
I said, if the question or what I just said?
The question.
The question is, when you think about the word boundary, personal boundary, healthy boundary, because they're all used interchangeably, what thoughts, feelings, or ideas come up for you?
like it's
I can
healthy.
start.
Oh,
Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Celie.
no, I was gonna say it's healthy. It's a good practice.
So that's what we know about it now. Before that, what did you think about it?
Oh, guilt. I had a lot of guilt. I
Mhm.
just, yeah, like I was disappointing my mom or whoever was asking me to help them.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Sala.
I think before understanding boundaries for me, I think I saw it as like this brick wall that I have to put up, like it's a barrier, so a permanent barrier almost. So that's how I saw it before. And I'll share later on, just, how I came about kind of learning about healthy boundaries later. But before I definitely saw it as kind of like I had to put up this, like a brick wall barrier between me and people.
Absolutely. So just to repeat, the question was, when you think of the word boundary, what ideas, thoughts, or feelings come up for you? And so I'll share, for me, a lot of the feelings that came up for me when it came to boundaries was awkwardness and intense and isolation, and definitely apprehensive about it, because it was, like I said, the way it was presented to me, just like what Sal was saying, it's just like, nope, nobody's allowed. Get away. don't come here. And it did feel very isolating at first. And so, and we'll continue to get more into that. So before I go on, anybody else want to share? Again, you can share in the chat or unmute yourself as well. I'll give it like a couple of 30 seconds. Not all at once.
Sorry, because I'm in the warehouse. Excuse me. But thanks, Ms. Carter, for sharing that. Now, for me, I guess boundary to me, like I shared in the past for our other classes, that it's how we structure that, how to create our boundaries in our families. I'm not from a perfect family, but I'm saying is that that's how you create the different mindset of how your feelings can control yourself.
Mhm.
Is to how, well, for myself, upbringing of myself, not knowing my mom and my dad, but my dad's sister that raised me, and then coming back to my family circle, then it's kind of hard to adjust at the time. But what I meant is that I kind of overlooked of that narrow side. Maybe that's why I kind of swap off the guilt, because I've just seen the blessings that I've been living each day of my life until all the way now, but I think boundary to me, I don't know what's unhealthy and healthy. It all depends on what term and how your emotions and how your choice of making that calls that boundary. But to me, elaboration of the word boundary to me is your do's and do nots. And where you're limited edition, where you're limited into.
No,
That's how I see it.
Oh, thank you, Lupe. That's good. I mean, because like I said, boundaries, like I said, in this class, we're talking about it in generally, but boundaries, of course, are definitely catered to the individual or to the system, to your family, whoever you're a part of. And so thank you for sharing that. So that being said, the definition of boundary that I found in this book called by Anne Catherine, where it said, her book is Boundaries Where You End and I Begin. And it said, healthy boundaries protect without isolating, contain without imprisoning, and preserve identity while permitting external connections. And I thought this was a truly great breakdown of what a great definition of what boundaries are. And so I'm going to break down each part, and then Sala's going to share a little bit about what she was referring to earlier. So when it talks about boundaries protect without isolating, what this in particular means, it helps protect you internally, which is our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts, and externally keeps you connected to others. To contain without imprisoning, meaning you get to have options. You get to make choices for your life, and you give yourself permission to do so. And then preserving identity while permitting external connections, meaning you don't have to give up who you are to make someone else comfortable and still being able to connect to folks. Now, as Celie was saying earlier, there was some, how do you deal with guilt? And we'll definitely get to that later on in the presentation. So Sala, is anything you wanted to share? What you wanted to share?
Yeah, I can elaborate on what I was saying earlier about, before, coming into realization with or an understanding of what healthy boundaries are. I definitely saw boundaries as maybe like a brick wall, like what we're talking about. Like it's, this barrier, this permanent barrier that I'm putting up against, between me and someone else, whether that be in a relationship, whether that be in connections with other people, things like that. And so reading about this definition and how it says, like, a healthy boundary protects without isolating. And so even though what my initial thought of a boundary is like a brick wall, that was definitely isolating me, right? If you think about it, that was isolating me. Because if you think about, like, let's just paint a picture, and if you think about a brick wall, you literally cannot see the other person on the other side, right? And brick walls, it's a very, very sturdy kind of type of structure, right? So it's most definitely isolating, and it did feel isolating to be able to see boundaries as like a brick wall, and then I'm putting up this barrier, this permanent barrier brick wall between me and people. But that's not what a healthy boundary is. So then for me, coming into realization about what a healthy boundary is, instead of now seeing boundaries as like this brick wall, I can now see boundaries as, like, I always use this example of like a fence, right? Like if you have a home or something like that, and you have a fence that goes to your backyard, right? So that fence is there because it initially goes around like your entire your property. Whatever your property is, that's your fence line. That's your property line, right? So having that fence there, I see boundaries as, instead of like a brick wall, but I see boundaries as like this backyard fence. And a fence is, if we all know, if you could picture with me like a backyard fence, there's a door, right? So there's a door there in the fence that I can open the door and let whoever I want to invite to come into my backyard, right? And then if I don't want to, if I don't want strangers to come to my backyard, I'll just lock that gate. I'll just lock that door. So it's boundaries is kind of the same way, where you have the ability to be able to open that door and allow whatever you want to allow to come into your backyard, or whatever you want to, whatever you're okay with. And then you can also close that door, and not allow, what you don't want to come into your life. And that's essentially how I saw boundaries later on. So and I kind of keep those two pictures in mind, where it's like boundaries is not like this brick wall, but I would liken boundaries to the fence in a backyard.
No,
So that's what I wanted to share.
No, I love when you always give that example, because it's true. I think when there are some people, like, for example, when I talk with clients, sometimes clients have a hard time letting go of a certain individual, and it can be a family member, friend, or colleague, coworker. And so what I talk about with them, and I'm just like, just because you set a boundary doesn't mean you have to get rid of them, but there has to be a certain place in you where they can't continue to have the same type of access if they keep violating boundary. So that in particular, when Sala was talking about the fence, that's how I it too, is like you get to pick and choose what part of your property that you want them to come on with whatever fence that you have. So I always love when you share that, Sala, and thank you for sharing that.
And it doesn't feel isolating too, right? Because then if there's a door there, and I'm opening the door to, my fence, my boundaries, and I'm letting people in, and if I'm like, okay, that person has hurt me before, I'm not ready to let this person in right now, then I'll just kind of close that door, right? But understanding that as it's what I'm okay with. So if at some time later on, I'm okay with letting this person in, then I can open that door and invite them to come in, right? So it's not isolating, because unlike a brick wall where, you can't really, have people in, you don't have like an opening where you can invite people in. So you're essentially just kind of locking yourself, in a cell or something. But if you look at boundaries like, like a fence to your backyard where you can open that door and close it whenever you want.
Love that. Does anybody want to add anything before we go further? Any comments, questions?
Vicky in the chat says sometimes you have to remove yourself from relationships, friends, families, coworkers that can be toxic.
Absolutely. And so I think one of those, and we'll talk about it as we get in there, we'll talk about a little bit. We don't truly address it about the toxicity that can go on, but we definitely talk about the guilt that goes on with that. So we can definitely include that in there. So great comment, Vicky. Thank you. Why are they important? So part of what I want to say is when we talk about truly setting healthy boundaries for yourself, you're truly going on a self-awareness and a self-identity journey. And when you are on that journey, and if you're wanting to do differently in your life so that you can have a different outcome for yourself, that always requires new boundaries. It is challenging and it will feel awkward, it will feel hard. But one of the things I always say to my clients, I always say to them, you have survived many a hard days. We will survive this too. They're like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah. So part of what I talk about with them is like, you have to give yourself more credit than what you do because you have survived hard days. And so just giving them that empowerment. And so boundaries, what a quick story. One of my clients who I met recently started her boundary journey, didn't really have any, had to set them with her family. And one of the things I kept encouraging my client to do was just like, if you are consistent with it, they have no choice but to hop on and do differently towards you. And here we are. Client stayed consistent. Family started treating her better, treating her differently. And she had a crying moment. And it was such a beautiful moment to share with her because I told her, I was like, you got this, just continue to empower him, because again, boundaries are truly teaching people how to treat you. So again, here's why they're important. Creates intentional, consistent, and healthy relationship with yourself. Whatever you do for you, a lot of times it will be, so for example, if you have poor boundaries with yourself, a lot of times you'll have poor boundaries with other people. What I always teach my clients is whatever you do in one area of your life, you will do in majority of all areas of your life. You understand what happens why they're important. You understand, share, and identify your likes, needs, and wants. Again, this whole boundary journey is about you, truly, truly about you. Teaches people how you like to be treated, creates emotional safe space, and it brings your voice to the forefront. A lot of times we are not taught, we are taught to be silent quite a bit especially within our culture. And so part of what I talk about the importance of creating intentional relationships with yourself, because when you're able to create intentional relationship with yourself, it helps with intentionality with others. Because it's just like, because sometimes we accept things we don't truly know why, because we never really sit and think about, how actually does that make me feel? And do I want that to continue to happen? So my question to you all, and you can unmute or put it in the chat, either in the Zoom or Facebook chat, is, what are your thoughts and how do you feel when your boundaries are violated? And last thing I forgot to say was like, when you create an emotional safe space, in that context, this is an emotional safe space where you can discuss challenges and where you feel like a relationship is not going to end. And so when I was able to create my emotional safe space and experience it, I'm like, oh, okay, that actually feels good. Like we can talk about challenges and still be connected. So that means, again, the question was, what are your thoughts and how do you feel when your boundaries are violated?
I mean, for me, the only thing I think of, I don't really have boundaries, so it's hard to answer. answer that because I mean people railroad me all the time, but I'm used to it. But I feel like it's culturally right because I try to be there for everybody. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you try to, let me ask you this. So when you try to be there for everybody, how does that impact you though?
Well, it it upsets me, right? So hopefully he
Mhm.
doesn't watch this, but I have an older brother. He hasn't gotten his life straight, but he'll always ask me for stuff or do this, do that, borrow this, borrow that. I vent to my siblings all the time, and they're like, "Well, why do you help him?" Because he's my brother.
Mhm.
But but my other siblings, I mean, I feel like they have boundaries, but they're just mean ass people. Um, yeah, yeah, that's what I can think of. So as you were saying, I was like, you actually have boundaries. I mean, I'm learning a lot for myself with these inner wellness classes. So I feel like I should tip you too after the 8 sessions. But yeah, I mean, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of times, I mean, and that's why I asked you what I asked you, Celia, because a lot of times we don't sit and think about how we are feeling when somebody does that. So just like you were immediately able to identify, oh yeah, I get really upset at him. So, and it's just like, okay, do I want to continue to experience that? And if not, then what is it that I need to do for myself? And so I have definitely been in the place where family has violated boundaries. And I had to really set like, this doesn't work for me. And so we have to talk about what can be done differently because that's the thing when it comes to boundaries, that there's always a way that you can meet in the middle to compromise. Doesn't always have to be one way. And that just depends on what it is. So like I said, everyone I talked about a little bit earlier, it's like when it comes to boundaries, it is always catered to the individual. And so with siblings and friends, they and family, they are the biggest violators of boundaries a lot of the times. And so but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's tough though because I mean that's where I just talk about the guilt part where it's just like, well, if I don't help him, no one's going to help him.
Mhm.
And I always tell folks it's hard to find a Pacific Islander homeless person unless they stole too many toasters. But you're always going to take somebody in, right? But you're always going to take somebody in until they violate that. But
Yeah.
it's just tough because that's what I sit with is just I feel bad afterwards and like, hey, I'll let you borrow the money, just pay me back when you can.
Mhm.
But
And I get, and here's the thing I say to that. And so the question I always ask my client, and I said, if you weren't an option, would they still figure it out?
yeah, that's good.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's like that Superman complex where it's like I have to save them.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing to think about.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the times, because one of the concepts I always say to my clients, I said, before you came into the picture, they figured it out.
Mm.
And so one of the things like, and I've said this to family members before and friends, and I go, however you figure it out, if I'm not a part of the solution, do that first. I'm very, very last resort. They're like, oh, and then I've got less calls. And it was great, because it was just like part of what it is to remove the enabling. Because I had to recognize I was an enabler. That was the reason they kept doing this. And they were fine, but I was upset and getting pissed off. And I'm like, what is going on? What are you doing there? And it always came with, well, da, 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 da. And I'm like, okay. So
And that's the somatic symptoms, Scarlett, that you were talking about from your experience in the beginning, right? When you were when you were kind of explaining your boundary stories and how you were like all these physical symptoms that you were experiencing. Because I think a lot of times people think like, oh, it's boundaries, like relationship with other people, but they don't really consider that sometimes it's how, like, you could be depressed, you could be, having a lot of anxiety, you could be exhibiting a lot of anger feelings, but you don't think it has anything to do with your boundaries. That's like one of the things I wanted to kind of point out when, like, from this bullet point that was talking about, with healthy boundaries are important because it helps me to understand, share, and identify what my likes, my needs, and my wants are. And in our culture that's very collectivistic in nature, where we tend to put other people first, family, friends, you know, everything before our own needs and wants and all of that. And then we tend to get the, you know, the stress, we tend to get the anxiety, we tend to get all of these other kind of like somatic symptoms even that, and not, it's not limited to just that, but we tend to experience all of these type of somatic symptoms, and we don't think anything that has anything to do with boundaries, when a lot of it does. A lot of like what we can change and what we can do to help ourselves, like and in those situations has to do and kind of ties back to boundaries.
Love that. So Lupe said in the chat, for me, when my boundaries were violated, all I can do is apologize as if I'm at fault. But if others do it to me, I cannot control it. But I just have to understand things happen, but aware moving forward, not allow it, now allow it to happen anymore. Forgive and move on. I don't know if that's wrong or healthy, but that's how I am on my choice. I mean, I think that's the thing. It's just like one of the things, you know, and Lupe, thank you for sharing. It's just like, do you want to change it? And so a lot of times what I go with my clients, and I just said, when you are tired of something, of certain thing, you'll change it. If you're not tired, you just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And I've had clients who literally would stick into some relationships, and I literally would have to say to them, you're not tired yet. So that's why that keeps happening. So when you're tired, let me know, and then we could talk about how to do it differently. And so,
Yeah, and adding on to, because like with what Lupe was sharing earlier too, when you were saying, Lupe, that it's for you, boundaries is your do's and your don'ts, right? And the thing is with healthy boundaries, it's, are you okay with those do's and don'ts? And as long as you are okay with continuing to do those do's and don'ts, then you don't have an issue, right? But I think, you know, things kind of get in the way or becomes problematic when those do's and don'ts, you're starting, you know, here comes guilt, here comes resentment, here comes anger, here comes frustration, here comes anxiety, here comes stress, here comes everything else. Then that's where it's like, okay, do I, is my do still a do? If my don't, do I still want to do this? Do I, or am I, you know, so then having to reassess those do's and don'ts. But
yeah,
as what we were saying, like, and that's what healthy boundary is as long as you're able to reassess those do's and don'ts and you are okay with it, then you're fine.
absolutely. Thanks for expanding on that, Stella. All right, next slide. Boundaries, guilt, culture, and guilt. Seeley, this is for you, bro. So a question to you, to the audience is, how does culture and your upbringing impact your boundaries? Go ahead, Seeley.
Well, I would say we're people of service, so we're, you know, always, you know, serving the elders, serving the community. I think, yeah, as the meeting started, I just jokingly said, when I go to a family function, I just grab a ia lava lava, which is like shorts in our culture, and then just go to the back and start, you know, doing whatever needs to be done to make that family function run. So it's very dutiful. I would say we're a dutiful people who are supposed to help out the community, very community oriented. So that's why when somebody calls, you're like, I will respond, even though I've got no bandwidth. I'm tired as heck, but who else is going to do it?
Yeah. You know, and that's the challenging thing about, because it is the dutifulness is truly ingrained in us. And so a lot of times what is unfortunate, what happens is we end up putting the family and the community system before ourselves, and we find a lot of who we are, our identity in that. And a lot of times it's a struggle to develop our own identity within that. And one of the things I've always said is, if you actually take care of yourself first and do it and do what you need to do for you first, you actually become better to the system. And so even when it comes to talking about with the system and the community and the family, is like contributing in the way that actually suits you and not what somebody else wants you to do. That is definitely challenging, because of course we are taught whatever the elders say you do. And so part of what I started to do was, I'm like, okay, but I hear you, but here's how I can contribute. And they're like, oh, okay, that works. So it's the way that you say it, and it's the way that you introduce it. And but it's one of those, it's like, I get it. And so, Celie, when you're talking about putting on your EA and going to the back, and I'm like, well, that's why I stay in the parking lot. So it's like, so I'm not called on for anything. But of course, sometimes I'm a part of it as well. So anybody else want to add, Sala as well? Anybody else want to add to the question is, how does culture and your upbringing impact your boundaries? Is there anything in the Facebook chat, Celie?
Yes, there is. Lots of Aho says, as a PI and with my upbringing, I've always felt that everyone and anyone is family. It's difficult even if it's unhealthy because the boundaries we set become blurred. I like that.
Yeah. And I think part of that is because we are, part of what I sit with is a lot of times we're not truly taught to identify us, like what we need for yourself. And that's the point of boundaries, is like to reemphasize, it's for you to understand you, your likes, your needs and wants. Because one of the things that I've seen within our culture is that I enjoy us staying very close, because we definitely stay close within the system. I think part of the challenge that I'm seeing, like, I literally had a family member say to me, like, oh man, you travel so much, you go by yourself. And I'm like, isn't that what you're supposed to do? And they're like, I don't know. And that was, yeah. And that was an interesting conversation, because they were so used to our system, our culture, so used to, we all travel as a unit. And so when I decided to travel on my own, even my own father had said to me, I went to New York by myself. And he was like, well, who are you going to stay with? I go, the hotel that I got. It's just like, wait, what? You're not meeting anybody there? I go, no, I'm just going to go because I want to go. So that was those are really different concepts for our culture. And so, and it's one of those, like, for me, it was like, I didn't want to think about what someone else needed, or what I didn't want to do what somebody else wanted. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. And so it takes, and that for me, in order to get to that place, I had to truly start identifying my likes, needs, and wants. And so, and that didn't mean I didn't mean I excluded my family stuff. I'm still a big part of my family, still do part of whatever all the events are. It's just, I have certain boundaries when it comes to, especially when it given to, whatever finance is. And I'm like, I can give you this amount and that's it. And then my family knows that I'm only good for this certain amount. And then they'll try to push it. Oh, can you give this? I said, I can give this amount. They're like, okay. And then that's it. That's the end of the conversation. I'm like, it's either you want this or nothing. They're like, okay, no, we'll take it. So that's what I'm saying. It's really, really a journey. Like I said earlier, really boundaries is talking about how to create your own identity and your own self-awareness along this way. So, Sala?
Yes, I want to start first by reading off a comment in the chat. It says, Mohammed says, it is until the age of 40 I started realizing what and why boundaries are so important for our mental health and our well-being. My culture, boundaries, honestly, is a foreign concept to our family and social norms. I completely agree. Because naturally our cultures are, again, community focused, community oriented, family oriented. So we tend to look at, groups as a whole, like, the whatever benefits the group as a whole, but we it's not individualistic, like, like the US Western culture. So which is why this concept, because boundaries is pretty much saying, like, hey, whatever you are okay with, not what your entire family is okay with. Boundaries is looking at what is Scarlett, what is important to Scarlett, what are Scarlett's wants and needs, not what is Scarlett's mom, dad, siblings needs are first, and boundaries is just looking at, okay, what is important to you, what are your wants and needs, and then kind of going from there. And I like what Scarlett has said earlier about, you'll really come to find out that when you are taking care of yourself first, it's much more better for the system as a whole. It's much more better for your family as a whole, because now you're not uber stressed out about stuff. You're not having all of these type of somatic symptoms because you're so stressed out about everything that's coming your way. But if you are able to find out what your needs and what your wants are first, and you're doing okay, now you can better serve your family. Now you can better serve, you can better show up for your community in such a way that is not stressful for you as an individual, right? So and then also going off of Scarlett's story, it's funny. With one of the last times we went back home in Samoa, and yeah, my husband and I and our kids are like, we're gonna stay at the resort in Samoa, right? So, and of course, I got like families everywhere. So when I first let my aunties and my uncles know, that's like, oh, the resort is literally at like the other village over. So I'm like telling my aunties, I was like, oh, we're gonna be staying at the resort, and they were like, what? Why are you staying at the resort? You're gonna waste all the money, all of these things. And it was almost like it was like, that's unheard of. What are you doing coming to Samoa and staying at a resort and not staying with your family? So it was just one of those experiences too, where it's like really having to like, no, it's okay, because we just want to kind of do our own thing, and then we'll come for dinner, that kind of stuff. It's like, really, I know and I understand where that's coming from. But at the same time, it's having to like, okay, well, we really just want our time by ourselves as well, and then going and seeing family and things like that. So I wanted to share that. Definitely, I had the same experience as well, Scarlett, with that.
Celia, I saw you unmuted earlier. Is there something you wanted to share?
Oh no, I was just going to resonate with your ability to say, hey, this is all I have for the fa lave lave, or the
Hmm.
family problems, because most people are just like, oh, what bill can I push so that uncle can get buried tomorrow? Because if I don't put my 500 in, the world's gonna end. And then you feel that guilt, right? You carry that with you, and so you
Hmm.
want to be I'm gonna represent for my family. But I feel like in the States we just have a different like monetary system that we live by. But it's
Yeah,
tough. I credit you, Scarlett, for saying, I got $50. If you want it, have it. If not, I don't got the 500. But
yeah.
some of the requests be wild. I'm like, bro, that for real?
Well, I mean, that was, and I'm glad you brought that up. And, because I had a Samoan client, male client, come in, and a lot of stress was giving money to the Fa Lava Lava. And so we talked about, okay, is there a different way that you can contribute that's not a financial strain on you? And the client was like, and so we talked about, what are your gifts? What are your talents? And he was like, well, I'm really good at painting. I'm really good at creating stuff. And I said, can we offer that rather than the finances? And he was so scared to do it. And he finally did it. And and it went over very well. Now he is the person that they go to, that's how he contributes instead of giving financially. And because it does, that's what I'm saying. You have to think about what's a different way that I can contribute. And I'm like, because part of can you be the setup team? And so part of, even when I talk about, if we're giving financially, it's just like, instead of giving can you give it to a certain amount to whatever's needed? So I always talk about, I can contribute to the food team, like whatever finances for that, I can contribute to that, and not contribute across the board. So that's what I'm saying. You have to, and that's what I'm saying. A lot of times the focus is always on finances, but it's just like, what's another way that we contribute? I can be the cleanup crew while the cooking crew does that, cleanup crew does this. I can be the shopping crew, like just thinking about how to give differently. And so I was glad I was able to work with that client and to see that his artwork is truly valued in the family functions, instead of having that true financial strain on him. And that's what I'm saying. There's so many ways to contribute. And that was a healthy boundary he had to set, because he got tired of getting notifications that his bills were overdue, because he was always giving to that. And that's a lot of times can be harmful, because I mean, and part of what Sal and I talked about a little bit before was like, the meaning of the Fa Lava Lava have definitely gotten away from what its true intent was, how it initially started. And so my hope is my hope is that it gets back to what its true meaning and true intention was. So, Sala, did you want to add anything?
I think Sylvia had her hand up, but I think we lost her. She might come back into the thing, but I think she had a question. But
Okay.
no, we'll wait for her to come up if she does. But no, absolutely, like, and it might be hard at first, right? Because then you're gonna be that guy at your family thing that's like, hey, I can't give the money, but I can paint something, and they're probably gonna look at you like, are you crazy? And let's be real, because they're gonna look at you some kind of way, right? They're gonna be like, what? But that's where, and as difficult as that might be for you and experiencing in the first time, but this is where your consistency and implementing your boundaries come in, because remember, you're not implementing your boundaries for someone else. You're doing it for yourself. You're doing it because your bills are way behind, and you're starting to lose your home or something like that, and so it's affecting you. So when you're putting down those boundaries, one, you're still honoring the culture. You're still in a way contributing to the culture, right? And so this is why you're like, hey, mom, I can't give 500, but I can, with my budget and everything, I can probably give 200 right now. Like that's all, like, I'm able to kind of give right now, is instead of 500 that you're asking me for, I can give 200. So one, you're honoring the culture by still contributing. May not be what they want, but it's what you're okay with. And then two, you're considering yourself, and that's what boundary is that's what healthy boundary is being able to think about, what you are going to be okay with, and instead of doing all of these things that's going to end up stressing you out and putting you in situations that are just not good for you.
Absolutely. In the chat, Lupe said culture is good, but people that leads it, that creates a different meaning and
So
abuse.
true.
Yep. And then that's why I said I know, like, so Celie, go ahead. What's your question?
Well, in the chat, Lots Aho says, I love that giving to what you can contribute. It takes me back to what it was that our ancestors did. How did they give? It couldn't have always been financial, but it could have been gifts or other acts of service.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about acts of service that happened, especially before it kind of got out of hand, a lot of times it was cleaning. A lot of times it was making a meal for the family. A lot of times it was like, hey, can I come do your laundry? Giving back in those different types of ways, and not only financially. So it's the same. It's gotten away, and Lupe is right. Some people do abuse it, and so I remember the first time I got to experience, Fat Love Love, and I'm like, wait, what? I don't even know them. And so, and then when it came to like some people only wanted to speak to get paid. I'm like, oh man, that makes me sad. That makes me really sad. That's not the intention of what that's supposed to be. To speak
Absolutely.
whoever you were trying to honor. So great conversation. I love for everybody in your contribution. Let's keep this going. So again, it's the impact of the family and the community system. We are frequently taught to always put something, someone, some system before us. And again, we tend to lose our identity in those things. And in those spaces, a lot of times we are often giving at a depletion, like we're often giving at an empty cup. And one of the things we talked about in our previous classes is like, you have to fill your cup up. And that means self-care, setting boundaries, whatever that self-care looks like for you. And so, because again, if you are better to yourself, you are absolutely better to the system. So with guilt, let's talk about it.
Scarlett, before you move on, I want to see if Sylvia, did you have a question before we lost you that one time?
Yeah, I get lost and I found myself. Yeah, thank you so much for letting me in. I was just adding up, to both of you, when we're talking about the boundaries, like more like in our culture. Yeah, I just wanted to share, we have a beautiful culture. We exist as a communal, same, I'm Tongan, we're all the same Samoan and pretty much, all the islanders, Pacific Islanders. But the thing is, that sometimes, like just what you were sharing, like you went to Samoa, that's exactly how my family is. You go to Tonga and they don't like to see you stay in a hotel. It's just like family, family. But that's the time, like that we have a healthy boundaries, in our culture, sharing, like we feel obligated. There's a wedding, there's that everybody feel obligated to go, like birthdays, funeral. We always feel like, we're part of it, to just to show up. But at the same time, there are some stuff, that's the time, that we have to look at ourselves, is this is always necessary, to include, or that's kind of like, I saw like one of the statement, that you put out. You have to look at yourself, to treat yourself like a healthy boundaries, if we always kind of think about like worrying about take care of everybody else, like that's how we feel obligated, to, like Celie said, he always feel like, to share with his brother. All are good and healthy, because that's what made us, like it's a good community, as unity and sharing, that's how we exist. But at the same time, I really feel there is a time, that come, there are things, that not always, to go according to, to our culture, because otherwise we'll end up taking care of everybody else and not ourselves. That's all I could just say. Sorry to take up the time. Thank you.
Don't ever apologize, Sylvia. Thank you. So, just to add on what Sylvia's saying, like it is very important to take care of ourselves. And this is the why it's so important to have, let's start to set healthy boundaries for yourself, because the unfortunate thing that has happened that I experienced is I've had 3 family members who passed because of family stress, because always wanting to give. And so that led to a lot of physical conditions
and mental.
Yeah, physical and mental condition. And that's unfortunate, because, like I said, boundaries are again, it's for the benefit of you, because again, when you're able to do for yourself, you are far better to the family, far better to your coworkers, to your friends, to the system. And like I said, because it is important, it is very, very important how you treat yourself. So with that being said, let's get into guilt. So here's the reason, let's because these are like the things that are why I think guilt and boundaries are important to talk about. A lot of times we don't set them is because of guilt. And so here's the reason why guilt happens. That potentially can happen. This is an exhaustive list. These are not the only reasons. But these are the general reasons that I have experienced from what what clients have shared with me before. So guilt is learned and rooted in feelings of abandonment. Abandonment leads to avoidance. So because you want to be part of something, and if you feel like you said it, then it's just like, oh, then I don't want to not be a part of it, because then I feel like, oh, I'm just going to avoid it. So like, because I still want to be a part of this. And so again, we talk about how to balance that. The other part is guilt is a survival pattern taught by your caretakers. It's just a generational pattern. It truly, truly is, because whatever you were taught, it just continues to generate, continue to permeate on and on and on. A lot of times we have guilt because we were taught to protect our caretakers' feelings at the cost of you. And a lot of times in our culture, we are taught to self-sacrifice very, very early. One of the things I remember as a 5-year-old was like, I was really taught to self-sacrifice early, and I didn't realize that at that time it was self-sacrifice. But now I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have been doing that. I was like, I don't think that was a good idea. And then at times, guilt is used as a control tactic to keep you in a place of service. That's unfortunate, because it's happened to me before, and it's just like, well, if you love me and if you care about us, and it's just like, but what behaviors, and one of the things I've had to say to some people who said that to me is just like, but where does that come from? Because nothing I ever said was that I didn't love you or didn't care for you any less. So that's what I was saying about in my boundary story. Just because I said no doesn't mean I loved them any less or that they were loved any less. It was just they were used to me being a certain way. And the fact that I decided to change it, they were like, oh, we don't like that. And I'm like, it's okay. You don't like it. I didn't like the way how it was going either. So that's why it's changing it to this way, what's beneficial, what's helpful for me. So Celia, I wanted to jump to you. Does that help when it comes to guilt?
Yeah, and I can relate to a lot of the examples that you put on there. So like even going back to that Psalm 1 client that you had for the, painting, I just think about my family. They'd be like, bro, you better go to the streets and sell that painting. That painting ain't gonna help out no damn funeral. But then I just start feeling, oh man, I gotta sacrifice for the team, right? I gotta make sure that Uncles gets the right plots and the right, gravestones. So I'm gonna, you know, push that cell phone bill or that mortgage payment just so that I can ensure that at that time when we meet to have the funeral that everything is met. But I also see that in my work too, that I do stuff for the Pacific Islander community as just like love for the community. Heck, I sang a song, everybody. I don't even sing. They were like, do it for the culture. I was like, I got you. I'll do it. But yeah, I think it's just, learning. It's tough. I mean, all I can say is it's tough. It's rough. Because I'm
sure.
rooted in those things, right? So I was taught most of those stuff, but
yeah, I think, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, even though your siblings are saying, you better go sing that picture on the corner, that's not going to help. And that's the thing. Everybody has a different definition idea of what help looks like.
yeah.
We have to think about what actually is help, because even though they may not see it as beneficial, it's just like, let's talk to somebody else and be like, hey, this is how I can contribute. So it's just like, because that's the thing where what I've talked about is like anytime I present an idea to family, and they're just like, oh, we didn't think about that. Let's see how we can do that. And it's just truly the way you present it and how you say it. So for example, like for people, like a lot of times people have a hard time saying no. So one of the always teach my clients, I said, well, let's talk about how to say it differently. So I said, what's the question you can ask, or what's the statement you can make? And so instead of saying no, it's just like, I'm unable to do that, but here's what I can do, which is because it's no, because sometimes people just see no and that's it. But it's just like, okay, but I'm not comfortable doing that, but here's what I can offer. So that's just a different way of presenting that, because a lot of times we still want to be a part of whatever it is. Like I said, it's just like, what is going to be helpful for you?
Yeah, no, those are some progressive Samoans you work with.
Well, no, I mean, and that's the thing. It's not, we all come from the same ideas. It's just the only thing that I do is introduce concepts.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, because that's the thing I think when it comes to these classes, like we are introducing things that have never really been taught or talked about in our communities. And that's why we always find these classes important. And so like, everybody who comes across there, this is how it is, how we grew up, and it's not going to change. And one of the questions I always ask, I'm like, well, who says it can't change? Who made up the rule? And they're like, oh, well, I didn't think about it like that. And I said, okay, so can we introduce something that'll actually be helpful for you? And anytime all my clients I work with boundaries, and one of the things, and I said, if you're consistent with it, it does make a difference. And for all of them to be in the place that they are and setting boundaries, I mean, it's a beautiful journey. It truly is. And so, like I said, it's not about them being progressive. It's just like, let's introduce some ideas, like what's actually going to work for you. And so they sit with it and they're just like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to do that. I said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. What do you want to do? Because again, it's all about what do you want to do and what's going to be helpful for you.
No, yeah, like I said, it's a tough teaching because anytime I'm around Samoans, I shrink back to Samoan culture, right? So like their big saying is Samoa le tua mua. But I was like, oh, before those colonizers came, what did we say before then? What are you talking about? God's always been with us. Go sit down. I was like, okay, yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the thing. It's like, it definitely is easy to shrink back into that. And so I think that's, anytime I attend a function, I always set what is, what is best, for me so that I can be fully present. And so, and honestly, just for everybody who's on here and online, I was okay with making people mad at me. I had to sit quiet. I had to be okay. And that, because with them being mad at me, again, that's the concept that I had to really tell myself. Just because they're mad at me does not mean I am loved less, and does not mean they love me less. Because a lot of times we are truly the unfortunate thing that we're taught in our communities is a lot of conditional relationships. If I do for them, they'll love me. If I don't do for them, they won't love me. And if we think about how we got, in trouble growing up, and it's just like, and one of the things I particularly did differently with my child, even though he irritated the mess out of me and he would get in trouble, one of the things I always came back to him and said, I'm mad at you, but I still love you the same. And he was like, okay. And so anytime he gets in trouble, he always says, I know you still love me, Mom, because that was the thing. A lot of times we were taught if we're in trouble, we didn't know if we were loved or not. And we kind of just continue to carry that as kids and as adults. And so again, it's really, really challenging what our conditions are, how we grew up, and how do we go towards what is truly an unconditional relationship, and what does that look like? What does that feel like? Lupe, go ahead.
I like that, Miss Kyle. You hit the main point of why I raised my hand. Because for me, coming from the sector in the culture, when I was sitting title for the whole for our family, and being chosen for you, they have no right, and you don't want it to become, and then having titles for you from a title to carry on, so you can be stuck inside the circle for the culture. That's the reason why I want to say I don't like. Because there's a difference when people that comes over to take over when your ancestors, that you see the differences of how things was maneuvered and how it was structured. For the high chiefs that I seen at the time was that they always eat last or do not eat until all the family are fed. And that kind of structure that I've seen was nice because it's serving those who went before you serve yourself. And then growing up, looking at it, and I have to have that self-care because I've learned it from my mom, my non-mom, that my dad's sister that raised me. And I had a hard time to compare it. But looking at it in that, though, I'm sorry, Brother Seeley, but introducing myself that to the Bible, yeah, that's how I was learned how to whom I respect myself. But the culture-wise, it's a different way that was brought up too. Because of the fact of who that's structured and who the people are, stands up like title and high chiefs names that take over and took over, that's how they have a different way they structure themselves. Even in churches too. I've seen different pastors that rose up in the time and they have a different way of how they want to run their churches. Yeah, it's all their choice because they're all sitting on that title. But if you have that heart and compassion heart for everybody to be served, respected, that's how I like to see it. But that's why I left the culture on the side. And by other means, even though it's a long run, but your family's going to come back to you because of the fact that, fruit cannot even fall far from the tree, what it says back in the days, one of those methods. But still, water, what they say, blood is thicker than water. Hey, that's why they cannot leave us all, for those that they did best. But I was so thankful when Ms. Scarlett was sharing that part of being changing. Yes, the people that sits on those platforms back in the days have been changed. Now in the modern time right now for us, can't be changed. And now I start seeing things that are called boundary. Like I said, I don't know if it's healthy or not at my time, but I was so grateful and thankful for all the way till now, maybe built me this way. But I'm grateful for it. I'm learning things now, but just by listening. I like the last time too that I was on the platform here, it really built me differently in my family. And I'm really grateful for that part because I'm one of the head nachos too. I don't care what people say about me or whatever, but I got to get to a level that I got to respect everybody else where I was raised from and upbringing from. But yeah, we're still learning, but I'm grateful. Thank you. Thank you, Scarlett.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Lupe. Celia, I saw you you're unmuted. Did you want to share anything before I go forward?
No, but well, I mean, this is kind of similar to gaslighting, right? If you look at it from that perspective, where they're kind of manipulating you to feel a certain way, or yep.
So gaslighting is a whole different thing. When somebody gaslights you, that means they truly don't care about you, and it's all about what benefits them. So it really, like I said, it's a very fine line. And so gaslighting is a whole different concept. And we could talk about that offline.
Okay. Okay. Right on.
Because
Thanks.
it's a very, very different thing, because there is a difference between gaslighting and somebody guilting you. Those are two very different concepts. Does that help, Celie?
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. So, and then the last thing is like just finding the balance. And like we've talked about it through here, finding the balance of boundaries and culture. The big thing about this, it is not a one size fits all. It just truly is not. It is, you have to, like what Sal and I continue to say, you truly have to curtail this to what helps you and what you feel safe and comfortable doing. So for example, a boundary, any boundary that I have now might not be comfortable with somebody who's starting to learn about boundaries. So that's why I said earlier and continue to emphasize boundaries are what you need and cater to your needs anytime I work with a client. So here's the reasons to think about your culture and upbringing. Again, it helps you understand your family negative relationship patterns and cycles. And then it also helps you understand how it impacts your self-esteem negatively or positively. And then when you understand, explore, accept the roots of who you are, you develop more self-awareness and you're able to show up for yourself more. This big thing is what I always talk about with my clients is like, you know, they always are sometimes hard on their caregivers. And I always say to them, I said, we have to give them grace because they didn't know any better. I said, you know better. And you feel like they like what you're learning, they should have known that, but that's not true. And I always tell my clients, the reason why you know better is because I'm teaching you it. So if they taught you it, they definitely would have taught you that too. Just like they taught you how to cook, taught you how to clean, whatever it is that they taught you. And so what I talk about is just like, let's talk about how to break that pattern and not continue it. Because again, this is about the power of choice. So again, why is it hard? Again, we're used to self-sacrificing. We're used to being the fixer. Again, we're taught to self-sacrifice very, very early. We're not taught how to share our feelings healthily or set boundaries. If you go on King County's public health, you can watch Sal and I's class, Know Your Feelings. So, because again, we're really not taught as a PI or BIPOC community of how to share our feelings healthily. And in that class, we talk about that. Next is, if they have the title of family friend, we're often treated poorly. One of the questions I always ask my clients, I said, if you actually remove the title of friend, family, mom, dad, brother, sister, would you interact with them as much across the board? They were like, well, no. I said, okay, so let's talk about what we need to do differently then. Because a lot of times we give more credit to the title of somebody rather than look at the quality of the relationship. And some of the family relationships, they can be harmful towards us, because like I said earlier, family friends are often our biggest violators of our boundaries. And then lastly, sometimes we experience low confidence and low self-esteem. And this goes back to, I always connect this to, is just like, if you are of you identifying who you are outside of the family system. It's just like, who are you without saying what you do and saying what you're a part of? And a lot of times when clients aren't able to do that, I say, okay, we got some work to do. That's all. Because like I said, we're always taught to think about someone else. And then when you come see me and I'm just like, tell me who you are without saying what you do. And they almost feel defeated that they're unable to do that. I'm like, no, that's actually a good place to start. Like, because we can now create that, whatever that is for you. So any comments, questions before I go further? No? Cool. Moving on. So healthy boundary tip number one, let's get into these 3 tips. How you think about yourself truly makes a difference. Truly makes a difference. Your thoughts impacts your feelings and behavior. So this is what we call in the therapy world, the thought triangle. But this is used in different ways. Different avenues use this as well. If you ever think about your behavior and your feeling, it's always connected back to a thought, always. And you can either start anywhere. You can start at the feelings part, you can start at behavior, start at the thought part. But your thought and how you think about yourself truly does matter. So one of the examples that I have is when I had the constant negative thought. So I'm going to go through the triangle with you. So the constant negative thought that I used to have was, I'm not enough. The feelings that were associated with that were, I felt unworthy, weepy, awkward, unseen, and unimportant. And the behaviors that I had with that is I was a big suffer in silence person. I was an emotional eater. I didn't reach out for help. And I didn't share, and I often projected onto people. And I was, even though people don't see it, I used to be mean. So if you watch the What's Underneath Your Anger, I talk about my anger story in there. So when I started setting boundaries and doing my self-work and working on self-worth, I started to change that thought. So the positive thought that I decided to change it to was, I deserve good things because I do, not because of some condition. The feeling that I had was I still felt awkward. I felt warm, beautiful, and more comfort within myself. And then the behaviors I started changing for me is that I actually smiled more. And one of the funniest awards, I think about it now, that I got, because this goes back to how angry I used to be. It was a middle school award that I got, it was the Grumpy Award. And it was because they said I always came in with a grumpy face. And I'm like, yep, well, it sounds about, now as a hindsight, I'm like, yep, that's about right. But the positive behaviors that as I smiled more, I took myself for a walk, and I celebrated myself in little wins. I didn't have to wait for something grand in order for me to celebrate. So again, that's healthy boundary tip number 1. It's how you think about yourself matters. Thoughts, feelings, behaviors are all connected. Number 2 is redefine the words family and friend to a personal definition, reduce societal and cultural definition. Notice I said reduce. I did not say get rid of. So you get to add on to how you want to define these things. And so we are taking those definitions and making it your own personal. So this is how you can make it your own personal definition. Is one of the things I always tell my clients to do is think about what characteristics that make you feel seen, important, in an array of things. And so it's like, okay, well, somebody loving me, makes me feel, a family friend loving me is important to me. I said, okay, what does that trait look like in behavior form? What does trust look like in behavior form? What does caring look like in behavior form? What does love look like in behavior form? What does safety look like in behavior form? So that's how you start redefining those definitions to a more personal definition, rather than just keeping only what our culture says or society says. So that's number 2. Number 3, power of and. The reason why I talk about the power of and, because and includes choices. A lot of times we don't give ourselves permission, we don't give ourselves choices, because it always has to be or. It's either or. And so or limits and actually produces pressure. But if we include and, it actually relieves tension, and it actually gives us more options. And so for a fun example that I always give, I said, instead of cookies or cake, I'm like, well, why not cookies and cake? And when I say that, I'm like, that's a good point. And so this is also teaching you, when you include the word and, is really teaching you how to give yourself permission, and give yourself grace. And again, continue to teach people how to treat you, because that's the end part. So for example, like I said earlier, instead of saying no, it's just like, I'm unable to do that, and this is how I can contribute. Instead of saying, or I can do this, because it gives the option. It gives you option, it gives you choices. So for example, one of the things I always say to my clients, I love my family, and there are times that they have hurt me. And includes the duality of a lot of things that we experience. It doesn't always have to be one thing or the other. So for example, a lot of times when we get in trouble, it's just like, I'm not sure if they love me, but it's really, yes, I got in trouble and they still love me. That's it. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can get into a chat. We can talk more. Again, thank you all. I mean, like I said, this was a beautiful conversation. Again, I enjoy these, and I enjoyed everybody's input. Does anybody want to share anything or have a comment? Any questions? Celia, is there anything in the Facebook chat as well that you'd like to share?
Let me check. No, not currently, but no, I think this is good. I think this is good concepts and ideas. Just like people to know that I love being Samoan. It's just sometimes I don't love the baggage that comes with it, and yeah, I love the fact that we're spiritual people, and that a good chunk of us love the Lord. But there's other options, right? I'm always trying to reach the ones that don't, because that's what we were called to. No, but yeah, like the first tip that you had shown of changing the narrative of how you see yourself is just tough, because I feel like I'm always trying to prove myself, especially here at King County, because everybody's like a doctor or a master's in public health. I'm just Sealy from the streets of the south end of Seattle. I mean, just like, hey, what's your titles? Hood rat? Does that count? But yeah, I know, and I feel like I have a good sense of the island community. So it's always tough to change that narrative of yourself, right? Of um, yeah, how you see yourself and represent yourself in different spaces, because it's different. In someone spaces, I'm the servant, but in like public health, other spaces, man, I would share my opinions like nobody else's business, because that place opens for it, right? They allow you to, talk story. They allow you to share your feelings. Where in the Islander space, I feel like I'm just another random citizen. But except for my Tungans love me. Anytime I go to my Tungan community things, I'm just treated like a royalty. So thank you to my Tungans. I'll stop there.
No, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think one of, like I said, the tips that we're talking about is a starting place. And so and that's the thing about these tips, that you can literally continue to use. It just gets better and better as time goes on, the more and more you utilize it. So I always liken it to, like, if you start a job, you're unsure of what the tasks are and the goals are and what the skills are, but the more and more you show up to work, the more and more you practice, you get better and better at it. And so that's the thing when it comes to the tips, that any of the tips that we give is like, it's literally just small tips that you can just take and just practice it, continue over and over and over again. So the thought process of how you think about yourself, because a lot of times we don't really sit with what's going on. And we just like, oh man, because if we look at somebody like, oh man, why are they acting out? Why are they doing this? And it's just like, what happened? So it's just like, we have the behavior we see. How are they feeling? What's the thought that came along with that? And so, like I said, and because the part of what how you think about yourself is to help slow yourself down, because we are always constantly going as a society, and we're not really taught, especially in our BIPOC PI community, we're not really taught to slow down. It's always go, 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 go. And it's just like, well, hold on, let me get my thought around this real quick, and then I can move in a different way. So that's what I'd say to that, Sealy.
Do you mind pulling up that slide again? I'm just curious again, looking at that, your triangle.
Sure.
I think it's also in the cheat sheet. Did you like the concept of the thoughts, feeling, behavior?
Yep, it's in the cheat sheet as well. So I attached those in the chat. So I attached the cheat sheet, I attached the feelings wheel, and I have attached the 50 ways to take a break. And so I will go through the Facebook chat and attach those to this, to the video as well. So yeah, like I said, and the reason why, like I said, just think about really how it's always thinking about how thoughts, behaviors, and feelings are all connected with one another, because they are.
Yeah, and it's such a, you'll see this concept just being utilized so much in therapy and in the psychology world, this triangle. So, but just some last comments. As with all of our classes, we want to point out that, like, we're not trying to take away from the culture, right? We're not trying to say, hey, learn your healthy boundaries, and you tell them, parents, like, no, you're not gonna give, like, no, that's not what we're trying to do. Okay. Awareness is a beautiful thing. So we are introducing, a different concept, as Scarlett was talking about, and there's a reason for that, because when we get PI community members coming into therapy, and they're coming in for situations that, like, they're having difficulties in their marriage because we're giving a lot in Falavilaves and we're losing our home, and our marriage is strained because I'm, listening to what my culture is saying, and I'm, not caring about what my wife is saying, and it's causing a lot of difficulties in the marriage and the kids and all of that. So when we get a lot of those things in, these are some concepts that might be helpful if implemented, right? So we just wanted to introduce some concepts, and for everyone, the goal is just awareness. If you have awareness on, now learning all of these different things that we're doing in our classes, like, it just helps you to better understand things from just a different perspective, and it frees you up from having your own assumptions, your own biases of other people, our culture, and all of that, and it helps you to make better decisions for your situation. And that's what we, just want to be able to put out there. We don't want to change. We're not at all saying like, okay, you put your foot down, kind of stuff. But it's like, implement healthy boundaries. It's important.
Yeah, thanks, Sala, for saying that again, because it's implementing in the way that's safe and helpful, and particularly emotionally safe and mentally safe for you. And so that requires just truly sitting with it, and so like I said, I'm glad you said that, Sala, because again, this boundaries is in particular for you, so you understand you, and it teaches people how to treat you. Any comments, any questions before I turn it over to Celie? Go ahead, Lupe.
Thank you, Scott. I was just in the chat box. I was telling Miss Sylvia that comedian that you brought us, my favorite comedian. I think he needed us to make the full package to help on PI side. But anyways, I really admire for the word that a big word that is changing. I'm taking me for tonight is changing. You have that. We have that power and authority to utilize it, but it's all depend as well, like you said, the content you're giving us, which is really true. Because a lot of our clients and a lot of PIs that serves, they had the hard time changing. They have the hard time to be flexible to adjust themselves, and it's very hard. And I just hope that they could at least allow themselves to have that little change for this kind of time. Because if the back in the days can change, and the rules and regulation, laws, policy, whatever there is for culture wise, and I think it's best for them to have a change for a better and a healthy way too. But I really thankful for that, and thank you so much for today's for tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you, Celie. You keep on hitting that high note, bro. You're good.
Thanks for sharing. Greatly appreciate it. Yeah. So, like I said, we will always have these types of conversations in our community, because again, it's just very important, because all of this impacts, like Sala was saying earlier about, when we think about like our physical ailments, sometimes it's just like, okay, what's going on? Because it's all connected some way, somehow. So if there's Celie, anything in the Facebook chat that I need to answer?
No.
Cool. With that being said, I'm gonna throw it back to you, Celie.
Yeah, so thank you again both for a wonderful, fruitful conversation. We are wrapping up in 2 weeks with cultural fatigue. So, be sure to check us out in 2 weeks, cultural fatigue. And we're actually going to do something different in the fall. So we'll update folks on that. But really enjoy my counseling sessions live on air with our 2 amazing therapists. But with that, everybody, enjoy the rest of your night, and thanks for joining us.